Hello and welcome. Tonight, the House of Representatives Committee on Defense resolves to increase the budgetary allocation to the Ministry of Defense. The National Assembly bothered about allocation of 11.8 billion naira for the takeoff of the Livestock Ministry. The Minister of Agriculture assures Nigerians of government's commitment to increasing food production. And South Africa rescuers pull 36 corpses from illegal mine, arrest 82 survivors.
On business, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission and Nigerian Communications Commission signed MOU to protect Nigerians from telecom exploitation.
On sports news tonight, the much anticipated 2024-25 Nigeria Women's Football Premiership kicks off on Wednesday across the country as the race for our new Women's League champions begins.
And from Abuja, the nation's capital, President Bola Tinubu joins world leaders at the opening ceremony of the 2025 edition of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week in the United Arab Emirates.
We begin tonight from the National Assembly, where the House of Representatives Committee on Defense has resolved to increase the budgetary allocations to the Ministry of Defense. The committee made the decision when the Minister of State for Defense, Mr. Bello Matawalle, appeared before the committee to defend the ministry's 2025 budget proposal. Meanwhile, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, who appeared before the House Committee on Defense, is pledging that the armed forces is working with relevant stakeholders to increase the nation's crude oil production to 2.2 million barrels per day. The House of Representatives also held a special session for the Armed Forces Remembrance Day.
The first plenary session of the year in the House of Representatives is coming a day before the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, and the lawmakers are dedicating the plenary session to honor the nation's fallen heroes. Adopting a motion of urgent public importance, the lawmakers undertake several resolutions to support the armed forces and the family of those that died in the defense of the nation.
To move a motion to give free scholarship to the children of the servicemen and free medical services to the children of servicemen, amongst other benefits that will motivate them as they stand in for us.
The House observes a minute silence in honor of the nation's fallen heroes and adjourns plenary to January 28th to enable committees conclude their work on the 2025 appropriation bill. It's a day dedicated to the military as the Chief of Defense Staff appears before the House Committee on Defense to defend the allocation to the Defense Headquarters before going into a closed-door session. The Chief of Defense Staff promises to work with relevant stakeholders to increase the nation's crude production.
Our target is to hit 2.2 for Nigeria. We're sure it's not something that we can also do alone. We also need the other stakeholders in the oil industry to also play their own role. We're doing more, providing much security so that all the other pipelines that before now have been closed for them to do. Most of the ones that have been reported, we're doing 100%. You pump in 100, you get 100.
The budgetary allocation to the Defense Ministry is also in focus when the Minister of State for Defense appeared before the House Committee on Defense.
Out of what we have in 2024, we can be able to provide just 20 APCs. What 20 APCs can do in Katsina alone, Mr. Chairman, if we can be able to have 50 APCs that can go inside bush to flush out those criminals, I assure you, within 2 months, we'll finish the issue of banditry.
Let me reaffirm the commitment of the 10th House of Reps to supporting our armed forces in their noble mission. We remain steadfast in our resolve to ensure a peaceful, secure, and prosperous Nigeria.
Nevertheless, the committee is urging the ministry and armed forces to be prudent and transparent in their spendings.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly has called for a detailed report on the projects and programs of the newly established Ministry of Livestock Development, particularly its strategies to address the farmer-herder conflict across the country. During the ministry's 2025 budget defense today, the joint committees of the Senate and House of Representatives on Livestock Development expressed concerns over the 11.8 billion naira budget allocation. Our National Assembly correspondent, Gloria Mizuki, reports.
Lawmakers in the upper chamber reconvened plenary for the new year, led by the President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, after weeks of recess. In his stirring welcome address, the Senate President begins by urging lawmakers to rededicate themselves to fixing the country.
For us, is the completion of the electoral reforms. We must complete this year. The time to act is now. Let us unite in purpose, strive for the common good, and dedicate ourselves wholly to the task of nation building.
The Senate, after consideration of the report by an ad hoc committee on regional development, confirmed all 34 presidential nominees for the governing boards of the Southeast and Northwest Development Commission. The confirmation followed a brief moment of contention by a lawmaker. At the end of plenary, the Senate President announced an adjournment for 2 weeks. The lawmakers continue their legislative duties at the committees as the 2025 budget defense sessions continue. A joint committee on livestock development meets with the recently appointed minister and officials.
We have a neat figure of 10 billion naira for capital and 1.8 billion for overhead. They also identified international cattle corridors coming into this country, and those corridors today have no semblance of any amenity.
The ministry's budget, among other things, immediately becomes a source of concern for the lawmakers.
Part of this ministry is to address some security issues, pending security issues. Let us not talk about concentration on foreign imports. Let us go back and make sure to the basic. Let us rehabilitate and start from the ones that we have.
We'll expect you to give us progress report on some of these your challenges, because we have noted some of the challenges, issue of accommodation and others. Your white paper, I expect that the white paper should be out by now.
According to the minister, a breakdown of the budgetary allocation to the ministry reveals that 10 billion naira is for capital projects and 1.8 billion naira is for overhead costs. The joint committee urged the ministry to refine its budget and present a supplementary request to ensure it meets the expectations and needs of the nation's livestock sector. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television.
Away from the National Assembly, but still talking agriculture, Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State has announced the establishment of a livestock development ministry aimed at boosting production, enhancing food security, addressing farmer-herder conflicts, and aligning with the federal government's livestock policy. The governor made the announcement during the 2025 annual livestock vaccination exercise in Itas Gadao local government area, where an allocation of 80 million naira has been set aside for the exercise, which aims to vaccinate over 1 million livestock. In addition, Governor Mohammed revealed plans by the state government to establish semi-earth dams for herders in collaboration with donor partners.
One of the leaders of the cattle of the Fulani Union has mentioned the issue of dams. We are into energy cares and also AgriCell. We are building over 100 semi-dams across the state, across the cattle routes, to ensure that at least water is provided for all the cattle that are coming into Bauchi. In view of the dispensable role of centenary cooperation played in livestock subsector, our administration has decided to sustain veterinary student manpower scheme despite the embargo on employment. Consequently, state currently has 146 veterinary students in various universities in the country under pre-service scheme. In recognition of the importance of livestock sector, the National Committee on Livestock Development under our erudite Professor Attahiru Jega was constituted by the federal government to draw up a roadmap on this sector. After extensive discussion with the committee in the course of his visit to Bauchi, it has become imperative for us to take appropriate measures towards livestock development, and consequently, a Ministry of Livestock is so established in Bauchi State.
More on agriculture, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Mr. Abubakar Kyari, has assured Nigerians that the federal government is committed to increasing food production to address food shortage and food inflation in the country. The minister outlined some of the recent developments in the sector while speaking with State House correspondents. Our State House correspondent Larry Lasisi reports.
2024 was a difficult year for many Nigerians as the price of food soared to unexpected heights. Poor yield and the insecurity that drove many farmers from their farms made an already bad situation worse. As a new year unfolds, the expectation is that governments at all levels will do more to ensure food sufficiency. And the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, who appeared before correspondents at the State House, touched on the price of food.
As I'm talking to you, there's availability of food. We also know that it's still prices are still, but they have been stable, and there have some foodstuffs have come down. The affordability index is still a source of concern for government, and that is what we are looking at and trying to see how do we bring it down.
He made clear the focus of the federal government.
I believe what we are doing is in the right direction to ramp up production so as to have lower food prices, availability, and at the same time export potential for our farmers.
He also spoke of the introduction of wheat cultivation in Cross River State, a first for a southern state. According to him, the plan is to cultivate hectares of wheat in both dry and wet seasons with expected harvest around March and April, among other initiatives. The minister also touched on the issue of insecurity.
One area that we are highly excited about is the emphasis on security by Mr. President in the 2025 budget. Katsina State has reported improvement of almost 70% of security that has gone down, that has opened up farmland for our farmers.
The minister also outlined efforts to address the challenges of transportation for farmers and initiatives to reduce post-harvest losses with a focus on fruits and vegetables. All said, a picture of preparedness and optimism is laid out. A picture many Nigerians will hope becomes a reality. Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
Just before we go on break, and in the aftermath of his budget defense session at the National Assembly, the Registrar of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB, Professor Ishak Oloyede, has expressed concerns over what he describes as a misrepresentation of figures in the 2025 budget proposal presented to the National Assembly Joint Committee on Finance on Monday. Now, fielding questions from journalists on the sideline of an event in Abuja, Professor Oloyede dismissed reports making the rounds that the board spent huge sums on fumigation, meals, among other items in 2024, describing them as misrepresentation of facts. He disclosed that the board's total expenditure for fumigation across the 36 states of the Federation in 2024 was less than 1 million naira.
I want to say emphatically, without any iota of doubt, that I never presented any budget performance of 2024 before the National Assembly yesterday. I think it's a lot of misunderstanding, mix-up, and so on. But unfortunately, I was not. And again, the person talking was somebody I have a lot of respect for. How will I like Comrade Oshiomole? But I believe everybody has his own days of not getting things right. I did not talk at any time about 2024. And we did not spend any money, any humongous money on anything in 2024. Indeed, what we spent on fumigation in the whole state of the Federation, all offices in 2024, not up to 1 million. And what we budgeted for 2025 for fumigation is less than 2 million. It's 2 million. So where all these things were going to, I think there was a mix-up. Governments are not, agencies of government are not linking up properly.
In part two after the break, tragedy strikes in Rivers State as Dutch expatriate trying to escape from suspected kidnappers drowns in the Aleto River in Eleme. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you have just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television broadcasting from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. The House of Representatives Committee on Defense resolves to increase the budgetary allocation to the Ministry of Defense. The National Assembly bothered about allocation of 11.8 billion naira for the takeoff of the Livestock Ministry. The Minister of Agriculture assures Nigerians of government's commitments to increasing food production. And South Africa rescuers pull 36 corpses from illegal mine, arrests 82 survivors. Africa has the potential to be the nemesis of the world or the solution to the global climate crisis, depending on how the continent chooses to approach the issues of development. These were the words of former Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo at the 23rd SL Edu Memorial Lecture held today in Lagos on the theme, Greening Africa's Economies. Can climate-positive growth deliver prosperity? Professor Osinbajo said it makes sense for Africa to develop along the green economic paradigm because the countries on the continent have climate competitiveness and will do better when they go green. He, however, explained, among other things, leaders on the continent need to work together and speak with one voice to be a major climate action powerhouse. Professor Osinbajo also made a case for Nigeria's use of CNG as a transition fuel.
I think that the point to be made, especially to those who say that we should abandon gas and use only renewable energy, is that gas must be used as transition fuel, and we have plenty of gas. So, and there is absolutely no reason why we should not use our gas in the transition journey. Absolutely no reason. As a matter of fact, many of the countries that are urging that we should not use our gas are countries that in their own multi-decade plans for the transition have gas as a major component. So there is no reason whatsoever why we shouldn't use gas as transition fuel. And I'm completely convinced that the position that has been taken, by the Nigerian government over the years is the correct one. Now we have enough gas to use, and we should invest in our gas and use that as we go along, even as we develop our renewable energy industry. The point of the matter, of course, is that one day it will be clear. Renewable energy, once it gets cheaper, the economic decision will be taken to use it more than gas or any other fossil fuels.
Talking health matters, the federal government is planning to reduce the cost of dialysis by about 80% in 10 selected federal health institutions across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. The Minister of State for Health, Dr. Isiaq Salako, made this revelation at the commissioning of projects at the Federal Medical Center, Abuja. Dr. Salako explained that the project is part of efforts to deepen the digitization of a process at the tertiary healthcare institutions. Our correspondent, Victoria Longjohn, reports.
The Minister of State for Health, Dr. Isiaq Salako, arrives at the Federal Medical Center for his first official visit to the health facility. Part of his task here is to commission some of the newly constructed projects at the center. The projects include the ward extension building and a clinical services complex. The aim is to enhance the quality of healthcare delivery at the center.
We will therefore be paying more attention to the quality of care and patient experience when they visit your facilities, rather than the sophistication of your equipment and infrastructure. With the rejuvenation of the National Tertiary Health Institution Standards Committee, we will be paying more attention on the standards of tertiary facilities, private and public in the country. Also, the ongoing initiative to deepen digitalization of processes in our tertiary healthcare through the Nigerian Digital and Health Initiative will be used to leverage more on digital technology for better feedback from patients and put more emphasis on quality of care in our facilities. Let me also use this opportunity to appeal to all of us, especially the management of the hospital, to keep this new building and equipment well maintained, well serviced, and ensure optimal return on the investment.
Meanwhile, the Chief Medical Director of the center reels out the services rendered at the hospital and makes an appeal.
We need land to expand more. The way the clientele increases, we also need to expand in order to accommodate the needs of the people of this great city. Our oxygen plant is no longer sufficient to meet the demands of our increased clientele. We kindly request your assistance in securing an undeveloped adjacent land to this hospital, which I will show the Honorable Minister later.
14th day of January 2025.
The Minister of State for Health then commissions the projects and takes a tour of the facilities. From Abuja, Victoria Longjohn, Channels Television News.
In Rivers State, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Rivers State Cassava Project Limited, Mr. Gibson Ruben, a Dutch expatriate from the Netherlands, has tragically drowned in the Aleto River in Eleme. Now, the sad incident occurred on Monday when his vehicle was trying to escape from suspected kidnappers who had ambushed him along the Eleme section of the East-West Road. Our correspondent, Charles Operum, reports.
A crowd is gathered around the Aleto Bridge along the Eleme section of the East-West Road. They are watching with interest as divers search the water. It's the aftermath of a tragedy as a vehicle carrying Mr. Gibson Ruben, a Dutch expatriate who is the MD of the River State Cassava Project Limited, and his security detail careened off the bridge and into the water yesterday evening as they reportedly tried to escape a kidnapper's ambush. An eyewitness says he witnessed the incident.
Yesterday, as I was coming, I carried 2 passengers from Akpajo. I get somewhere there, I heard a gunshot, I stopped by close of Ndroma. I told them, no, this may be a combat between police. I said, no, I moved down to the area. On the process of the experts, I find out those men, I can't name them, I don't see them, it was night. On the process, there was a police that surrounded the man, he's a white man. So, but he's still in the car. So on the process of the interview and they were allowed like exchanging words, hey, this and that. Before you know it, the blow gone and the motor fell inside here with the gunshots.
Speaking to our correspondent, the council chairman, Brian Gokba, blames the federal government for the poor state of the road, which he says has caused an avoidable accident.
This accident is avoidable, but because of the negligence of federal government on their part to fix the road. We are using this medium to call on the Federal Ministry of Works, the Minister of Works, David Omaye, to swing into actions. Most unfortunate thing here is that the victim is an expatriate and he's not going to speak well for our country and our states. You know, where at this point we are encouraging investors to come and invest in our states.
Soon, a crane arrives and the search and rescue records some success as the remains of Mr. Gibson's body is recovered and taken away by the police. Though the Commissioner of Police declines to speak to the press, the command issues a statement saying the incident occurred on Monday, 13th January 2025 at about 20:30 hours at Aleto Eleme Bridge, where some gunmen ambushed Ruben's vehicle, causing it to lose control and veer into the river. Interestingly, the youth leader for Eleme has also issued a 14-day ultimatum to RCC, the company handling that section of the road, to return to site or risk facing the ire of the community youth. As of the time of filing this report, there has been no response from the Minister of Works, David Umahi. Charles Opurum, Channels Television News.
So let's head to the nation's capital now, and Gloria Umezoke is standing by to give us the latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Gloria.
Thank you, Ayo. We turn attention now to President Bola Tinubu, who was among world leaders who graced the opening ceremony of the 2025 edition of Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week in the United Arab Emirates. A key part of the ceremony was the unveiling of Zayed Prize winners for the UAE Pioneering Global Award in Sustainability, with Abdulateef Olaosebikan of Nafam Foods Nigeria also emerging as a winner. The Sustainability Week, tagged the Nexus of Next, Supercharging Sustainable Progress, is an occasion for policymakers, business and civil society leaders to explore pathways to fast-track transformation to a sustainable economy and evolve a new era of prosperity for all. President Tinubu is expected to speak at the event and underscore his administration's reforms, including those related to energy sufficiency, transportation, public health, and economic development. We're still ahead on the news at 10. Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission and Nigerian Communications Commission sign MOU to protect Nigerians from telecoms exploitation. That's in business news. Please join us again. Back as you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television. 32-year-old Timileyin Ajayi has been remanded in the Criminal Investigation Department of the Nasarawa State Police Command in Lafia, the Nasarawa State capital. Timileyin is under investigation for the alleged murder of his girlfriend, Salome Enejo, a 24-year-old member of the National Youth Service Corps. Our correspondent, Halima Gayam, reports.
32-year-old Timileyin Ajayi, the suspect for the murder of his alleged girlfriend, Salome Ajaidu, is brought to the headquarters of the Nasarawa State Police Command. He is paraded alongside the weapons he allegedly used to commit the crime. Timi was nabbed Sunday, January 12, while allegedly trying to dispose the remains of Salome in Karshi Development Area of Karo Local Government Area of the state. Salome is a 24-year-old member of the Nigeria Youth Service Corps, serving in the nation's capital, Abuja, before the ill-fated incident. Frail from injuries sustained during a mob action, Timileyin, who claims to be a cryptocurrency trader, confesses to the crime.
It's not something I really planned on. Something that it happened on that day, and it happened. It's not like I had a plan in mind.
What did you see in the phone that made you very angry?
Most of the chat with the other guys. That's what I saw on the phone.
So that was when you decided to kill her?
Yes.
Do you have any regrets?
I don't have any regrets.
Okay, you don't regret killing her?
I don't.
Salome's family denies knowledge of any relationship between the deceased and the suspect.
I just need to know why he murdered my sister, and I need justice to just be served. That is all that I need, because any other thing that will happen will not bring my sister back to life. That I have come to terms with, but I just need the law to just take its full course on this guy.
The police are sure that justice will be served.
Investigation is ongoing, and upon conclusion of the investigation, he will be arraigned in court for prosecution. I want to assure the family and members of the public, or we are calling on members of the public who might have any complaint against the suspect to come forward with their complaints.
The suspect, Timileyin Ajayi, has now been remanded in the custody of the Criminal Investigation Department of the Nasarawa State Police Command, pending further investigation. The family of the deceased is seeking justice, and the police have assured them of a thorough probe. We will continue to follow developments in this case. Halima Gayam, Channels Television News.
Well, more bandits have laid down their arms in Kaduna State to embrace the non-kinetic steps initiated by the state government. The latest happened in Sabon Birnin community in Gabi local government area of the state. The development has also led to the unconditional release of several kidnapped victims, as well as the reopening of markets and other socio-economic activities in the community.
Restoring peace in conflict communities in Kaduna State through non-kinetic approaches is one of the focus of the administration of Governor Obasani. This initiative focuses on addressing the root causes of bandits attack and other forms of criminality in the affected communities and promoting peaceful coexistence without relying on military force. Through the peace deal arrangement, several bandits have laid down their arms at Sabon Birni in the Gabi local government area, thereby giving room for the return of socio-economic activities in the area.
These are areas that before no one will dream of even coming. From the airport Kaduna, nobody will even dream of coming to Sabon Birni. But today, you can see for yourself that peace has returned, not only in Sabon Birni, but in all the adjoining towns and villages in this local government, notably Igabi, Giwa, Birlungwari, and Chukun local government area.
The return of relative peace to the community also means the return of economic activities in the area as residents return to their homes. However, the residents are appealing for government's presence in the community.
We tell Our Excellency of Kaduna State, because of insecurity, our primary school and secondary school, they are all damaged. So now we are appealing the government of the Kaduna State to come and repair our secondary school.
Residents also call for the adoption of the model in other communities to sustain the peace deal.
If it is true that the government wanted the insecurity to be eliminated, for the view of the people, let the government to communicate or to negotiate with the people, with the government of Kaduna, and negotiate with the government of Niger State, and negotiate with the government of Kebbi State, so that this reserve forest that will be the layout of this banditry will be cured and the people will serve. But if these 3 states or 4 states are not negotiated, the insecurity is still going to be happen, but it is not our wish.
The state government plans to adopt the model in other communities to ensure that the state is safe for all. The Commandant of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, Mr. Olusola Odumosu, is reaffirming the commitment of the Corps to protect government and public facilities in the Federal Capital Territory. Speaking in Abuja at the passing out parade of Corps 2 of the Basic Arms and Weapon Handling, the Commandant says the Corps will not relent in its core mandate of flashing out hoodlums and scavengers from the nation's capital. The Commandant also stressed the need for all personnel of the Corps to remain professional in the discharge of their duties. Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's over now to Ayo for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you so much, Gloria. First Bank of Nigeria Limited has described media reports alleging that it abused court processes in its legal battle with General Hydrocarbons Limited as false and misleading. In a statement released on Tuesday, the bank clarified that it hadn't fulfilled its obligations under the loan agreements. However, the dispute began when First Bank demanded good governance and transparency in the transactions and demanded that GHL allegedly rejected. Now, the statement emphasized that as a responsible and law-abiding corporate entity with deep respect for the judiciary, First Bank will not comment on matters currently before the courts, as these are sub judice. However, the bank expressed its concerns over what it described as sponsored but false narratives being circulated in some media outlets. According to First Bank, the legal tussle stems from a commercial transaction in which it extended significant credit facilities to GHL to finance the development of certain oil mining lease assets. The bank asserts that these facilities were governed by robust loan agreements that outlined the obligations of both parties and detailed the security arrangements. The statement further alleged that breaches by GHL, including the diversion of proceeds, prompted First Bank to demand the appointment of an independent operator to manage the finance assets transparently. This request, the bank says, was in line with the terms of the agreement. When GHL refused to comply, First Bank initiated a court case to protect its interests. The bank also accused GHL of pursuing unnecessary arbitral proceedings in response. First Bank maintains that its decision to take legal action was necessary to safeguard its assets, recover diverted proceeds, and ensure that similar breaches do not occur in the future. The bank assures its numerous customers, stakeholders, and the general public that it remains solid, calm, steadfast, and unflinching in its resolve to continue to provide first-class services to its teeming customers within and outside the country. First Bank also thanked its shareholders for the indicatively oversubscribed rights issue of its parent company, First Holdings Company plc, in the first round of its capital raise, and looks forward to an equally successful final leg of the recapitalization exercise when it is announced by First Hold Company. Let's get the very latest from the world of business with Will Ibong. Will.
Thank you, Ayotunde. On the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC, and the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, have signed a memorandum of understanding to safeguard Nigerians from telecom exploitation. The agreement focuses on improving consumer protection and fostering fair competition. FCCPC's Tunje Bello says the partnership aligns with President Bola Tinubu's vision of regulatory collaboration to boost market efficiency and consumer welfare. He adds that the MOU will streamline processes benefiting both operators and consumers. The NCC's Vice Chairman, Aminu Maida, describes the collaboration as a milestone for the telecom sector, ensuring transparency and fair practices. He calls on stakeholders to embrace the initiative and its commitment to consumer-focused reforms. Still talking about the telcos, the telecommunications companies acting under the directive of the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, are set to temporarily cut off 18 banks' unstructured supplementary service data USSD access due to their inability to settle a 200 billion naira debt that has accumulated since 2019. This decision, which is not expected to be immediate, follows a recent order by the Central Bank of Nigeria and the NCC, which ordered banks to pay a major part of the USSD debt owed to telecommunication operators. However, only 4 banks complied with the directive, while 18 banks flouted it. Meanwhile, the NCC says it will soon issue a public notice that will contain the names of the erring banks, which should prepare bank customers to seek alternatives during the suspension period. And the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has sanctioned deposit money banks 150 million naira each for failing to provide cash through ATMs during the Yuletide season. This move, aimed at ensuring smooth cash availability, follows repeated warnings from the CBN. Banks affected include Fidelity Bank, First Bank, Keystone Bank, Union Bank, and others. The fines were issued after spot checks revealed non-compliance with the CBN's cash distribution guidelines. And the acting director of corporate communications at the CBN, Mrs. Akama Sidi Ali, emphasizes that maintaining cash flow is crucial for public trust and economic stability. The CBN says it will continue monitoring cash handling at bank branches and POS operators, collaborating with security agencies to crack down on cash holding and violations, including enforcing daily withdrawal limits for POS operators. And it's red, 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 and still more red on the second day, trading day at the NGX. Laddie Williams tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the stock market report. Well, from a mild 8 basis points drop yesterday, the bears took a bigger cut out of the all-share index. Over 1%, 1.66%. All-share index sitting at 103,000. Market cap 63 trillion. And we saw volume and value rise with a dramatic sell-off we see. And Dangote Cement, that's the market mover today. Share price dipping about 9%, 431 naira to close. We also saw MTN Nigeria, that lost about 3% of its share price. Let's look at the sectors now. We see it's just the oil and gas counter in the green, 0.29%, while we have the consumer goods and banking counter taking a hit today. So with the Bears dominating proceedings today, yet today returns, that was almost wiped out, was standing at 0.68%, but the Bears are weighing.
And that's a wrap on business. It's back to you today.
Many thanks, Will. Simon Pusey is up next with Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Talks are resuming in Doha on a deal for a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of Israeli hostages, as key mediator Qatar says an agreement is very close. A Palestinian official familiar with the negotiations said for the first time in the war, delegations from Israel and Hamas are holding indirect talks in the same building. The deal would see action happening in stages, with 3 hostages released on the first day and Israel beginning to withdraw troops after that. President-elect Donald Trump would have been convicted of illegally trying to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election, which he lost, if he had not successfully been re-elected in 2024. That's according to the man who led US government investigations into him. The evidence against Mr. Trump was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial, according to special counsel Jack Smith. Donald Trump has since hit back, saying Smith was deranged and his findings were fake.
Okay. First, I want to share an update on where things stand now, as we know.
US President Joe Biden says that tens of billions of dollars will be needed to restore Los Angeles to its pre-wildfire state after the devastating fires in California. The president pledged full federal support, promising the government will cover 100% of costs for firefighter overtime and debris removal.
33% in the fire in Pasadena, 95% in Sylmar, and the fire in Ventura has been 100% contained, and that's progress. And although the federal government is going to cover 100% of the cost for the next 180 days for things like firefighter overtime pay, debris removal, temporary shelters, it's going to cost tens of billions of dollars to get Los Angeles back to where it was. So we're going to need Congress to step up to provide funding to get this done. And we're going to get that done, God willing.
Rescuers have brought up 8 more bodies of dead illegal miners out of an abandoned Stilfontein mine in South Africa, while hundreds of illegal miners remain trapped below. Authorities say more than 400 people are stuck underground, while the number of dead illegal miners is over 100. There's been a tense standoff with police since November. Police said they blocked miners' supplies of food and water to force them out and arrest them for illegally entering the abandoned mine in search of leftover gold, part of a crackdown on illegal mining that has plagued South Africa for decades.
We made sure that as the cage goes down, it goes with our own volunteers so that they can give us a true reflection of what is happening down there. Yesterday they told us that about more than 400 people are still stuck down there, need to be extracted. And they also told us that the number of dead bodies is actually more than 100.
A statue of Ghana's immediate former president, Nana Akufo-Addo, put up at the end of last year, has been destroyed. The unveiling of Akufo-Addo, of his likeness in November in the country's western region, sparked a social media backlash, as well as being mocked and described as self-glorification. Its launch had been in honor of the president's development initiatives. Local media shared images showing the statue in a ruined state with its severed head lying on the ground. It is not clear who had targeted the sculpture or what the motive was, and the police have not commented. South Korea's Constitutional Court has held its first hearing to decide if the suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol should be removed from office after his shock martial law attempt last month. The hearing ended within 4 minutes because of Yoon's absence. His lawyers had earlier said he would not attend for his own safety, as there is a warrant out for his arrest on a separate charge of insurrection. In December, Mr. Yoon was suspended after members of his own party voted with the opposition to impeach him. And over 20 million people have performed the holy dip ritual at the Maha Kumbh Mela festival in India's northern city of Prayagraj. The ritual dip is believed to absolve devotees of sin and confer salvation from the cycle of life and death. Held every 12 years, the Maha Kumbh Mela, or Great Pitcher Festival, attracts more than 400 million visitors, both Indians and tourists.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. The much anticipated 2024-25 season of the Nigeria Women Football League Premiership will kick off on Wednesday, January the 15th, with thrilling matchups across the country. In Group A, Nasarawa Mason will host Dana's Ladies at the Lafia City Stadium, while in Ado-Ekiti, Ekiti Queens will play host to Heartland Queens. The start game in Group A is between defending champions Edo Queens and Abia Angels at the Samuel Ogbebudia Stadium in Benin City, which will be televised live to football fans. In Group B, Women's Federation Cup champions Rivers Angels will host Ibom Angels in Port Harcourt. And the Patami Stadium in Gombe will host the clash between Adamawa Queens and Niger Rattles. Another thrilling clash in Group B is the clash between former champions Bayelsa's Queens and Delta Queens in Yedegua. And the Confederation of African Football (CAF) have announced the postponement of the African Nations Championship, that's the Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda 2024, that was scheduled to kick off from February the 1st to the 28th to August 2025, with the draws scheduled for tomorrow in Nairobi, Kenya. CAF technical and infrastructure experts, some of whom have been based in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, have advised CAF that more time is required to ensure that the infrastructure and facilities are at the levels necessary for hosting a successful tournament. And CAF President Patrice Musepe is, however, confident the stadiums, training fields, hotels, hospitals, and other infrastructure and facilities will be at the requisite CAF standards for hosting in August. Manchester City's hope of winning a 5th consecutive Premier League title suffered another blow as they threw away a 2-0 lead to draw at Brentford. Chelsea's Reece James marked his Premier League return after injury with a stoppage time equalizer to salvage a draw against Bournemouth at Stamford Bridge. And Graham Potter picked up his first win as West Ham United head coach thanks to a clinical display in front of goal against Fulham.
Many thanks, Chris. And the main news again. The House of Representatives Committee on Defense has resolved to increase the budgetary allocation to the Federal Ministry of Defense. And the National Assembly says it's bothered about allocation of 11.8 billion naira for the takeoff of the Livestock Ministry. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. You have a good night.